All right, guys, I wanted to do a video to talk about fuel saving. This is on the VLN setup, so it will be a bit different whenever we get to the full 24-hour setup, but I was just comfortable with it and I wanted to try to bang it out. The math target that we have to hit is we have to be better than 12.7. 12.7 works on math, but in practice, I was finding that it wasn't going to work. So somewhere in the 12.6s is where you actually need to land. I had a lap with a 12.5, and even that was cutting it kind of close. I have yet to successfully pull off an 8-lap stint, but obviously I'm getting much closer, and if you'll take a look at the lap times, you'll see that there is some progression there. This was when I was first trying to adjust into it. Obviously, some mistakes were going on. And quite frankly, these are my normal lap times. So I was running 804s to 806s during the race, 803s occasionally, but nothing great. You can see with fuel savings, I even got all the way down to 8 flat, 0.999. If I was aggressive in the final couple of corners, that could have been a 759. You'll see that this stint wasn't complete. I had a little oopsie. So I went ahead and exited out on the 13th lap, but this was the first session that I had that was on track to actually hit the target. So I'm going to go through. I'm basically going to try to do my darndest to point out where I'm lifting, where I'm braking, and kind of what I'm aiming for. I will say for practicing, this won't work during a race, but for practicing, what I would recommend is get the best lap time you can do just doing it normal, just full sprint pace, and make sure you turn your delta on and cover the session best lap or the session optimal sector. Is actually probably better in this case. What I'm going to try to explain is what you're going to try to do is you're going to try to lift off the gas, and what you're going to notice is your time's not ticking away super fast, but it starts slowly ticking away, ticking red, and what you're looking for is there will come a point where you would have started braking if you were in full sprint mode, and you're just going to keep coasting through that point. There's going to come a point where you're going to hit a distance where your speed is basically going to equal the speed that you were doing when you were under a full brake with when you're coasting in. And at that moment, that's when you're going to be a bit aggressive on the brakes, and you're going to try to get it, slowed down and pulled into the corner. Most of your focus should be pure exit speed. Don't worry a ton about just busting that corner out. You just really need to make sure you get as good of an exit as you can. That way you have as many kph as possible, so when you're coasting, that bleeds off a little bit better. So we'll go ahead and get started. I don't have very smooth. Let me try that again. So we'll get started here. And what I'm going to point out is I'm already coasting somewhere around this point. So you can see my throttle input, boom, I'm already off. I'm way the heck away from the white line over here. I would actually recommend coasting a bit further than this. So if you give that a look with the relation to the wall, you basically wait a tick from the point that wall is over, and you lift off. And then wait, now brake. Again, gonna focus on trying to get as much of a straight line exit as I can, because I'm gonna burn up my tires in the corner. We're going to take these corners mostly normal. I say mostly. Definitely down to first gear to rotate this. I didn't do it in this one. Oh, I guess I did. But first gear definitely helps. Push wide here. This is another fuel save opportunity. I was personally finding some inconsistent braking in this corner, so I tend to brake well before that 100 board. So you can actually lift somewhere about right here. I think there's a little white line that you can go off of. It's not a super long coast, but it is a coast. This corner is going to be pretty much normal, but what you want to focus on is, again, it's all about driving that exit out so you're carrying as much speed as you can, so that when you do that little bit of coasting, it counts for a little bit more. So the target should be to try to cut that green as much as you can get away with confidently, so you can get back on throttle pretty early. Since you're doing such a low speed here, you can afford to kind of rotate it a bit. and get it going, and you're not going to suffer a lot from the rears being warm. Okay, we're coming up on the next big fuel save opportunity. There's a really great marker for this one. It's not hard to start it, but it's definitely hard to finish it. So let's pause here. This white sand right here, it's going to feel so dog slow when you come up to it, but it really does pay off to hold it here. I basically lift off as soon as I get to that sand. And what I'm going to do is I'm kind of almost doing the same braking point as if I hadn't even let off at all, but I'm going to wait until just after passing that 50 board, and then you need to incredibly rapidly get down to third gear. If you start braking and then slowly dip your gears, you're just not going to have control of the car like you want to have control of the car. So make sure as soon as you hit that 50, boop, boop, and brake, like really quick. But you definitely want to brake after. So lift, brake, brake. I haven't downshifted too slow there. This is another opportunity to coast in. You're carrying 166 kph. It doesn't feel like you are because you just came through that chicane. It's worth it. Somewhere around here, you're going to lift, and you just have to fill it out. There's not an amazing marker. I just kind of go by feel here. In fact, I think I actually push wide here, if I'm not mistaken. Subtle detail, but when you're coming up to this corner, notice how I'm pointing out to the right. You can actually make that corner quite a bit easier if you kind of aim to the right when you go past this barrier here, and then kind of swing it around. Me personally, I want to be at the speed I want to be right at this hill crest and already starting my turn in, but you're going to open that corner up quite a bit, and you're going to save your tires and keep them from heating up in this kind of twitchy section coming up, so it's worth it. This corner coming up, if you're not already taking it flat, you need to be. This really is about making sure you're slightly turning to the right the whole time and your weight's kind of already shifted to the left. That way when you kind of start to crank it to the right a bit more, the weight's already there and it's just going to kind of shoot in. If you're not already taking this flat, you need to practice taking it flat. It's pretty vital to keep that kph up to not suffer from the next coasting zone. Anywhere here between this yellow chalk and that white chalk, depending on the exit you got out of that last corner, because it is a relationship with the speed you just got an exit through. You can pretty much lift at any point. I was consistently lifting at the end of this white paint here, but I was noticing that I was needing to add a bit more fuel savings to my laps, and with the 24-hour GP circuit, I think we're going to need even more. So I would start to encourage somewhere on this yellow, start to lift. You'll notice I just started braking about here. I made sure my car's pretty much pointed into the corner already, so I can get a burst of straight line braking, a little bit of a turn, burst of straight line braking, bleed it off, and try to go. Personally, I recommend stay out of second gear here. There was some funny behavior with TC. Whenever I'd go into second, sometimes it would just kick in. If you keep it in third, I never had that issue. The section normal. I will say that I noticed with the fuel saving, that little section back there, it really feels quicker. I mean, it feels slower because you're not pushing, but your tires just have so much more grip because you weren't hitting everything else crazy hard. So even though that section feels lethargic, I was actually noticing a big jump up on my delta from my sprint laps, and I think it's just because the tires were just more prepared to receive it. Again, here, just all about getting on the throttle as early as you can get away with. Milk the living daylights out of the kph. This right-hander is just a quick lift once you're inside the dip, but make sure you're back on throttle inside the dip. So throttle. That hit of throttle inside the dip really helps drive the car into an angle that helps come through. All right, here's our next big lift we're coming up to. I'll start lifting about now. it feels like you're just going so slow here, but there's a trick to it. The braking zone is so long under a sprint setup that you have all the time in the world under a lazy fuel saving mode to like coast into where that braking zone meets up. So it's going to feel like you're just throwing away time and just throwing it away, throwing it away, throwing it away. Trust the process on this one. If you wait, you're going to get rewarded. So about here is where I'll start to lift. Coast, 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 coast. I'll point out right here is normally under my sprint condition. This is where I would have started to have broke actually a little bit earlier, if I'm honest. So you'll compare that to where I actually brake under fuel savings. So I waited all the way until right here. So if you notice, that was about right here. I could go a little bit deeper, but again, prioritizing exit, sometimes I was noticing it wasn't worth it, so I just went ahead and I get onto it a little bit earlier to finesse it through. Don't touch that inside curb, it hates you. This section's going to be mostly normal. Okay. This is another one that works really well. You can anywhere between this bottom here, where you can kind of see the black tire marks, and this white, anywhere in this zone is a good place to lift. I think for our race, we're going to have to lift somewhere here. So pretty much at the bottom of this divot. You'll notice I was able to go over that curb, and I didn't really ever have to touch the brakes. My foot's ready to touch it if I'm not getting the grip that I'm expecting. But you can pretty much just coast right over the top of it, and you'll notice because you're doing it that way, you're rewarded with your car kind of ends up more to the left here, which kind of helps open up this next corner. I like to point my car out here for second. In this particular lap, I don't really do that, but I do find that I get better braking if I kind of point here and then rotate in a bit harder. So on a normal lap, even on a sprint lap, you'd kind of lift at the end of this black tarmac here, and you'd kind of coast through that corner and then get back on throttle afterwards. I never really felt like going through there fully lifted was really giving me the time that I needed, so I would compromise. I would lift at the end of the tarmac, same as normal. I would coast through the corner. I'd get on throttle for maybe 1 second, 1.5 seconds, and then I would let off and coast the back of the rest of the way through. It just kind of helped settle the car down. It gave me a little burst of speed, and I just felt more confident with the car overall. So lift, throttle, lift. And again, hugging third real tight here. Stay off traction control. This is another good lifting opportunity. There's no reason why at the top of this hill you can't immediately start lifting. I probably could have lifted earlier. Prioritizing exit. Everything's about the exit. So you'll notice coming around this corner, I'm gonna already bleed off of the gas. So I'm pretty much taking this entire little straight segment completely off. And what's really important for me is I am aiming every bit of my rotation for this piece right here. Not this corner here, not this corner here, but just this piece over here. I'm trying to do everything I can to swing it around that moment. If you time it just right, you can basically smash the throttle and the entire rest of the corner will come to you. You just kind of have to deal with it. See, I had to lift there. So again, I'm already lifting right here. I am going to get on the brakes as I get closer. I'm going to turn this into 2 braking zones. I'm going to brake in, kind of trail, brake in a straight line. And what I'm going to prioritize is you'll notice I'm trying to point out here. You get a lot of rotation in this little dip here. So if you kind of time that braking straight in, you can go a tad deeper before you go and you can cut left. Again, full throttle, maximize speed. And this has a great marker for where I'm going to start lifting. This mark right here is where I start. there may be a possibility on the 24-hour setup. I may need to start using this marker here. You're actually carrying 200 kph here, so it's not as slow as it seems like it is. But you can coast in there, and I'm basically going to try to smash the living daylights out of the brakes whenever I hit this little walkway here. It kind of, you see how the hill kind of goes up right there? You get a lot of braking power on that, so you can really kind of push into it. Prioritize exit. Alright, and we'll speed up here. Oop. Around this corner, basically, once I get around the corner, I am lifting immediately. Lift. And then sometime after that black sign that just passed by, I'm going to feel it out based on temperatures and stuff, but I'm going to pass that sign and then get on the brakes. Again, prioritize exit, especially this section. We'll speed up. This corner right here, the death trap, if you coast into it more than just the lift that you would do to normally take it, you know, semi-flat, you can get a lot of rotation initially and just smash it. And the risk profile of doing that goes way down. Maybe it's a tiny bit less efficient, but you are saving a little bit of fuel. It's less risky, and you're going to be far more consistent and closer to that threshold. So you'll see I come in here, I lift it early, and it was all the way out, and I never came close to touching. Lift. So let's talk about that. Coming into this corner, I found as soon as I felt comfortable that I had control of the car, after coming over this hill, so right about this moment, I'd lift. Really, the only thing I'm waiting on is I'm waiting on the balance of the car to satisfy me, and then I was getting off the throttle. I didn't want to jerk on the throttle and cause any weird snaps or anything like that. So get off as soon as you feel comfortable. And there's a good little marker that you're looking for here. If you come out slightly right and come in left, you'll see I just compressed down into this braking zone. You can see that right here there's a dip. Oop. As soon as you hit that dip, you're going to get a ton more braking force, so it makes up for the fact that you're braking in a lot later than you would normally otherwise would. I think I get a kind of a rough exit out of here because my braking wasn't amazing, but you are going to be very safe to make the corner. Personal style, this is a patience corner. I wait all the way until I see this part right here, and then I try to do everything to drive out as hard as I can. Nothing special here, just falling in the dip, kind of using that upside of that compression point to slam on the brakes. I find that staying in the middle to high side of the carousel works best for speed. Coming up here, this left-hander's flat, and then we're getting into another coasting zone. So flat, and you can see there's really great riding right here. At the start of this line, you can go ahead and lift. We may have to lift a little bit earlier, but for this purpose, I was lifting here. This is going to turn into a balancing corner. It's not a slowing corner because you've already kind of bled your speed off from doing the coasting. You're kind of already at the right speed, so it's really about just balancing the car around. I personally try to hug the left here as tight as I can because I feel like I'm very likely to crash and get into a scenarios on that right-hander by hitting the curb. So I hug the daylights out of this so I can force a good drive on the next one. I still hit it. Keep this tight. There you go. Okay. We're going to go mostly through full throttle until about right here. Right here is kind of a decision point. You'll notice I'm already off everything. I'm going to use the fact that I'm transitioning the weight of the car from the right to the left and kind of getting it into the right position. I want to come over here so I can swing left and then immediately swing right again. So I use the off throttle to balance the car and not worry too much about anything else. And then I kind of just feel it out just for that weight transfer effect. So you can see I'm just barely touching the throttle just to kind of balance it, or brake rather. And then I'm trying to get on throttle as soon as I can, hit that inside curb, get on the gas. And if you're able to straight line that as much as possible, you get rewarded. There is an opportunity to do a tiny coast there, but depending on the balance of the car, I worry about, or sometimes don't worry about it. This is an easy, quick little short coast. Again, Try not to bleed too much speed off using the brake. It's all about balancing that front end. Lift here. Short lift up there. Throttling out. Another short lift here. And you're basically going to try to full throttle all the way through here. Immediately, fourth gear, hold the brakes to the right. I did a bad job, but I managed to hold on to it for full throttle out of here. I'm going to say full throttle all the way until that big right-hander. Okay, so for this one, I was noticing this white graffiti was a really good marker. I think we're going to need to go earlier. Now, the really cool part about this is because we are going downhill initially, we're hardly bleeding any speed. So if we need to use the yellow here, I wasn't having any difficulty at all with that. It felt fine. It felt stable. Again, this right-hander, if you're lifting that early, if you make it a priority to stay to the left, you can kind of coast around into it. Your brake, again, is not actually going to be used to slow you down. It's just to kind of balance the car. So try not to slow too much. What you'll notice is on really good laps, when you hit it just right, you can actually hold that like 10% braking all the way up until that uphill left-hander, and you'll effectively have coasted all the way from here clear into that left-hander, which is a really cool feeling when you get it right. Thank you, windshield wiper. So that was barely touching any brake at all. And exit normal. Let's take a look at that with the lights on. So little bit of brake, little bit of brake. Little bit of brake, little bit of brake. Now, in a perfect world, you would have been further out to the right before you cut across. It's just the nature of me being a bit fresh to this track that I kind of miss that occasionally. A lot, actually. This right-hander is actually kind of interesting. So you have the option of you can either just tap the brake and kind of hook it into the right and carry enough speed. Because I'm in fuel saving mode, I noticed that right about here, if I kind of lifted for a while and then kind of carried it through, I didn't actually have to touch the brake. The deceleration up the hill was good enough to carry it through. It probably is a touch slower, but again, we're trying to save fuel, so it kind of works. So. I think on that one I did touch the brakes, but didn't have to. Alright, let's go down to the end of the straight. Okay, so there's some choices at the end of the straight. Obviously, it's going to be different if you've got draft by a long shot. So I played around with a couple of different versions. I coasted down the hill and I throttled up the hill. I throttled down the hill and I coasted up. I found inconsistent results whenever I coasted down the hill and throttled up. There seemed to be too many variables at play. It was a bit of a crapshoot. So what I personally was doing was, depending on how much fuel I felt like I was needing to save, I would definitely use this yellow paint, the bottom of the hill here, the yellow paint, as a marker for when it's time to let go. And I'm going to really coast this thing in as far deep as I can. I'm going to go past that black tarmac point that you're going to see in a minute before I start braking. So lift. And brake. So you'll notice that brake was about right here. The normal braking zone is up here. Well, not literally, but pretty close. So if you're normally braking here and you're not braking all the way until there, that's where all that speed difference comes from. So for me, this was the point of the track where I was losing the most time compared to a sprint time by far. However, because of how long I'm off the gas, it feels like that's the way you have to pay the toll, right? And this feels like you really get that really exaggerated long lift, and you're able to kind of coast through here, and you get rewarded for it. So I'm going to continue to experiment with this because I am losing a solid like 4/10 to my sprint times coming through here, but there may be no way around it. You may just have to eat it. But yeah, that's how I've been taking it. And we'll do turn one more time. you'll see pass the wall and lift. Okay, that one was probably a bit too late. I was probably excited at the lap time I just did and wanted to go a little bit quicker, if I'm honest. But yeah, I don't know. I jacked my jaw a lot. I hope some of this was useful. Some of the reference points for where I was braking. I hope that was useful. Again, I want to just repeat the key factor. You're looking for longer braking zones that when you coast into them, you're going to try to brake way later. And the way that if you're uncomfortable doing that, again, I recommend set a sprint lap with your, doing your own normal pace. Turn the session optimal sector on, and basically watch that delta go red, 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 green, green. Right as soon as it starts to turn green, you're basically matching the point that you would have been at if you had done a sprint and you were under full braking. Start braking at that moment. Use that as kind of a feeling out guide. Obviously, you can't stick to that 100%, but as far as like trying to feel out where's the right place to brake, I found that to be a tremendous tool. And there was tons of corners where initially I was only losing like a tenth through them, which was a big improvement over where I was before. And then some of the corners, I got to the point where I guess the tires were just cooler. I noticed I was blitzing them way faster than if I was in a full sprint mode. I am going to chalk that up to the tires being cooler and easier to handle. But it does reward you. If anybody else has a better idea of how to attack that final straightaway entry, I'd love to hear it because I feel like there's tons of room for improvement. Because everywhere else that I'm doing these strategies, I was able to more or less match my time. That was the one spot where I just absolutely couldn't match my time, and maybe that's just the nature of it going uphill and having the bumps and stuff. But that's the only spot that I had trouble. I have extreme confidence that I could hit 759 under these conditions. This was a 33C track. But yeah, the pace is there, and you can see like obviously some of these are practice, but during the race I was only doing 803s to 806s. I don't know that I ever got into an 802. You can already see like just in that first session I already hit an 802. And then that very next session, I started living in 802s before I finally got a really good lap. And this lap felt really good. I had a bobble in it. I easily could have gone faster than the previous one. And then lap 13, I just simply made a mistake, and that was the end of it. And I crashed the car and quit. Anyway, hopefully that's helpful. Like I said, I have yet to do a successful 8-lap stint doing this trick. However, I'm staring. You can't see it, but it's on the side of my screen. I'm staring at my thing where the last lap I did was 12.68, and it said laps remaining 8.05 whenever I came into the pit. So if you hit 12.68 or better, you're probably doing pretty good. It is tricky because of that long straight before you start if you do the reset trick. Obviously, you have to pay for that fuel going all the way down there, so you're kind of working out of a deficit anyway. But I didn't worry about it too much because to me, once you add the GP track and all that's there, we're going to have to brake a lot more or coast a lot more anyway. So we'll have to figure that out as the week goes on, but I hope this helps. Anyway, yeah, good luck.